The weapons qualification chamber stretched before Rachel Hayes like a cathedral of steel and glass. Overhead lights hummed in perfect rows, casting sharp shadows across the firing positions. The air carried that distinct smell of ozone and recycled atmosphere that marked every coalition military facility she had ever visited. This one, Vanguard Station, orbited a contested border system where 3 species territories met in uneasy alliance. Rachel set her rifle case down on the inspection table with a soft thud. Around her, 40 cadets from a dozen different species were making final preparations. The sounds of advanced technology filled the space. Plasma coils purred with barely contained energy. Gravitic stabilizers pulsed with rhythmic blue light. Auto-tracking scopes ran their diagnostic sweeps with soft electronic chirps. Holographic displays materialized in the air, showing wind speed, humidity, atmospheric pressure, and 100 other variables that their weapon systems would calculate automatically. She opened her case. The chamber went quiet. Not all at once, but like a wave rolling across the room as cadets noticed what she was unpacking. The silence spread from one firing position to the next until even the electronic hums seemed muted. Rachel lifted her rifle from its foam padding. The weapon was old by galactic standards. A bolt-action design that humans had perfected centuries before making first contact with alien civilizations. The stock was dark wood, worn smooth by countless hours of handling. The barrel was blued steel, meticulously maintained but showing the fine scratches that spoke of actual field use. The scope mounted on top was analog, with manual adjustment rings for windage and elevation. There was no targeting computer. No holographic interface. No AI assistance protocol. No recoil compensation system. No plasma anything. Just metal, polymer, wood, and glass. The laughter started from the Karen section of the range. Cadet Vexenar rose from his firing position, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming purple and black under the lights. His compound eyes, each containing thousands of individual lenses, fixed on Rachel's rifle with what could only be described as amused disbelief. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked between words in the way Karens did when they found something particularly funny. "Is that actually made of metal?" Vexenar called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Where is the targeting computer? Did you forget to pack it?" More laughter rippled through the chamber. A next-hairy cadet, whose energy-based form shimmered inside its containment suit, pulsed with colors that Rachel's translation implant interpreted as mockery. 2 Veshan cadets exchanged glances and hissed softly to each other. "Maybe it is a ceremonial weapon," another voice suggested. "Humans carry them for tradition, yes?" Rachel said nothing. She had expected this. She continued her inspection routine, running her hand along the barrel to check for any shipping damage, testing the bolt action to ensure it cycled smoothly, checking the scope mounts for tightness. Her movements were practiced, economical, the actions of someone who had performed this ritual thousands of times. Cadet Tyler Knox approached from the Talvari section. Unlike the others, his body language conveyed curiosity rather than mockery. His environmental suit hissed softly as methane circulated through the breathing apparatus that allowed him to exist in the oxygen-rich atmosphere the station maintained for the majority species. His 3-fingered hands gestured in the Talvari way that indicated genuine inquiry. "Corporal Hayes, I must ask, where are your enhancement systems?" Tyler's voice came through his suit's translator with a slight mechanical quality. "The recoil compensators? The predictive targeting algorithms? The automated range-finding systems? I see none of these things on your weapon." Rachel looked up from her inspection. Tyler's large eyes blinked slowly, waiting for an answer that made sense to his engineer's mind. "Don't need them," Rachel said simply. She pulled a small cleaning cloth from her kit and wiped down the scope's objective lens. Vexenar had moved closer now, his pointed feet clicking on the deck plating. He loomed over the inspection table, his 2-meter height giving him a clear view of Rachel's entire setup. His mandibles spread in what Rachel had learned was the Karen equivalent of a contemptuous smile. "You are in the Pangalactic Defense Coalition's elite marksmanship program," Vexenar said, his voice dripping with superiority. "The finest shooters from 73 member species compete here. And you bring equipment that my species stopped using before we achieved spaceflight." He chittered again. "This should be entertaining. Watching you fail, I mean." Rachel met his compound eyes without expression. She had heard variations of this speech before. On Earth, during basic training, instructors had said similar things to test her resolve. The words changed, but the challenge behind them remained the same. She reached into her case and pulled out a small box of ammunition. Not energy cells. Not plasma cartridges. Actual brass-cased bullets that she had loaded herself, carefully measuring each powder charge, seating each projectile to exact specifications. Actual chemical propellant, Vexenaire observed. How quaint. How primitive. How perfectly suited for failure. At the far end of the range, Instructor Krell stood motionless. The Veshan weapons master was a veteran of conflicts that predated Rachel's birth by decades. His scaled skin bore scars from battles fought in vacuum, in crushing gravity, in toxic atmospheres. His eyes, with their vertical slit pupils, missed nothing. He watched Rachel's every movement as she assembled her gear, laid out her ammunition, and checked her data book where she had recorded her rifle's performance characteristics in different conditions. Krell said nothing, made no comment, offered no judgment. He simply observed with the patient attention of a predator watching prey, or perhaps a teacher evaluating a student. Rachel loaded 5 rounds into her rifle's internal magazine, the brass cartridges sliding into place with soft metallic clicks. She closed the bolt, then opened it again, not chambering a round yet. The action was smooth, perfectly timed, the result of thousands of practice repetitions. Attention, Krell's voice cut through the murmurs and laughter like a blade. The chamber fell silent instantly. When Instructor Krell spoke, cadets listened. Standard qualification course. 800 meters. Stationary targets. 20 rounds. You have 15 minutes. Take your positions. The cadets moved to their assigned firing points. Rachel walked to position 7, a prone shooting station with a padded mat and adjustable rest. She knelt beside it, looking downrange at the targets barely visible in the distance. Around her, sophisticated weapon systems powered up. Holographic displays materialized showing wind direction, temperature gradients, even the Coriolis effect from the station's rotation. Targeting lasers painted invisible lines toward distant targets. Rachel dropped into prone position. The rifle settled against her shoulder in the exact same place it always did, the stock weld perfect, her cheek finding its familiar spot. She looked through the scope and saw the world narrow to a circle of magnified clarity. 800 meters. The target was a standard humanoid silhouette. She could see it clearly enough. She took a breath. Then another. Slow. Controlled. Feeling the air move in the chamber. There was a ventilation current, barely perceptible, moving from left to right. She watched the indicator flags downrange, seeing them flutter ever so slightly. Vexenaire's plasma rifle hummed to life at the next position, its targeting laser already painting the first target with a red dot. His weapons computer chirped softly, confirming range and atmospheric data. "Try to keep up, Corporal," Vexenaire said without looking at her. "Some of us are actually equipped for this century." The range officer's voice echoed through the chamber. "Commence firing." Rachel exhaled halfway and held it. Her finger found the trigger, taking up the slack with gentle pressure. She felt her heartbeat, waited for the pause between beats and pressed straight back. The rifle cracked, the sound sharp and distinct against the electronic whines of energy weapons. The recoil pushed back against her shoulder, familiar and manageable. Downrange 800 meters away, the target's center mass lit up with the impact marker. The range computer's voice announced the score. Perfect center. First round hit. Rachel worked the bolt smoothly, the empty brass casing ejecting in a glittering arc before landing on the mat beside her. She chambered the next round and found her target again through the scope. Around her, other weapons fired in rapid succession. But Rachel took her time. There was no rush. No need to prove anything except what she already knew. The rifle was just metal and glass. But in her hands it was enough. Every targeting computer in the chamber registered the same result. First round, center mass, perfect score. The electronic confirmation echoed through the range as Rachel Hayes worked the bolt on her rifle, the brass casing ejecting with practiced precision. She did not pause to celebrate. Did not look around to gauge reactions. She simply chambered the next round and found her second target through the scope. Around her, the other cadets fired with impressive speed. Vexenaire's plasma rifle spat controlled bursts, 3 rounds downrange before Rachel had even settled into her second shot. The weapon's artificial intelligence made micro-adjustments between each trigger pull, correcting for variables faster than any biological mind could process. His targeting display showed hits registering on his target, good scores appearing in rapid succession. Tyler Knox worked his Gauss accelerator with methodical efficiency. The weapon hummed continuously as magnetic coils propelled projectiles at hypersonic velocity. His quantum predictor ran calculations in real time, adjusting aim point for wind drift, air density, even the minute gravitational variations caused by the station's rotation. Every 3 seconds another round launched downrange. Rachel took her time. She breathed in a steady rhythm, feeling each shot before she took it. Her trigger finger moved with deliberate smoothness, no jerking, no anticipation. Just steady pressure until the rifle surprised her with its discharge. The fundamentals never changed, whether shooting at paper targets on Earth or holographic silhouettes in a space station orbiting an alien world. Her second shot broke clean. Another center mass hit. She worked the bolt again, the action smooth and familiar. Third shot. Fourth. Fifth. Each one placed with the same careful precision. She noticed something as she worked through her string of fire. The other cadets were faster, yes. Their technology allowed for rapid engagement. But their scores were not perfect. Vexenair's display showed several hits in the outer rings of his target, acceptable scores but not ideal. His AI had made corrections, but those corrections meant his first rounds had not been quite right. The computer compensated, but compensation meant there had been error to correct. Tyler's quantum predictor was impressive, but she could see his grouping spreading across the target face. Good hits, all of them within scoring zones but scattered. The computer was adjusting for variables, but perhaps too many variables, calculating probabilities rather than certainties. A next Harry cadet 3 positions down fired energy bursts that left glowing trails in the air. The shots were spectacular to watch, each one computer-guided from the moment it left the weapon's emitter array. But the cadet fired 7 times at a single target before achieving a center mass hit. The first 6 had been close, walking in toward the center as the AI learned and adapted, but they had still been misses by the standards Rachel had been taught. Rachel finished her 20th round with 11 minutes remaining on the clock. Every shot had found center mass. No corrections needed. No follow-up shots required. 20 rounds, 20 perfect hits. She safed her rifle, set it down carefully and waited. Vexenair finished 30 seconds later, his plasma rifle's cooling vents hissing as they bled off excess heat. He glanced at Rachel's target display, then at his own. His mandibles clicked together in what might have been annoyance. His score was excellent by any standard, but he had used 28 rounds to achieve it, the extra shots correcting for the AI's initial calculations. Tyler completed his course and immediately walked over to Rachel's position. His environmental suit hissed softly as he moved. He looked at her rifle, then at her target display, then back at the rifle as if trying to understand how these things connected. "Corporal Hayes," Tyler said slowly, "your equipment has no computational assistance. No environmental sensors. No ballistic computer. Yet your accuracy exceeds those of us with full technical support. I do not understand the mechanism by which this is possible." Rachel picked up her rifle and began running a cleaning patch through the barrel. "Practice," she said. "Fundamentals. Understanding what the rifle will do before you press the trigger." "But the variables," Tyler protested. "Air density, wind speed, temperature gradients, Coriolis effect. You cannot possibly calculate all of these factors without computer assistance." "I don't calculate them," Rachel said, inspecting the patch for fouling. "I feel them. Wind on my face tells me direction and strength. I watch the mirage through the scope, see how the heat waves bend. I know my rifle, know exactly how it performs. The computer can give you numbers, but numbers aren't the same as understanding." Vexenair approached, his pointed feet clicking on the deck. "You were fortunate," he said dismissively. "Standard course, stationary targets, controlled conditions. Any competent shooter should achieve acceptable scores. The true test comes with complexity." Instructor Krell had been standing at the range control station, reviewing the scores on his data pad. His scaled face showed no emotion as he studied the results. Then he looked up, his vertical slit eyes focusing on Rachel. "Again," Krell said. His voice carried absolute authority. 4,000 meters. Moving targets. Night conditions. Thermal decoys and holographic interference. You have 1 hour to prepare." The chamber went silent. 4,000 meters was 5 times the distance they had just shot. Moving targets meant tracking and timing. Night conditions eliminated visual references. And thermal decoys with holographic interference would confuse even the most sophisticated targeting systems. Vexenair's mandibles spread in surprise. "Instructor, this exceeds standard qualification requirements. We are not training for—" "Standard requirements do not apply to snipers," Krell interrupted. His eyes never left Rachel. The word hung in the air. Snipers. Not marksman. Not shooter. Sniper. A term that carried weight across every human military organization, a designation that spoke of patience, precision, and a level of skill that transcended simple shooting ability. The other cadets looked at each other, confusion evident in their varied body languages. They had assumed this was just another qualification course, another box to check in their training progression. But Krell had just elevated this to something else entirely. Tyler's translator emitted a soft questioning tone. Instructor Krell, you believe Corporal Hayes is trained as a sniper? The human military specialization? Krell finally looked away from Rachel, his gaze sweeping across the assembled cadets. I believe nothing yet. That is why we will test at 4,000 meters in darkness. True snipers do not rely on technology to make their shots. They become part of the weapon system itself. We will see if Corporal Hayes possesses this capability or if she simply performs adequately at basic distances. Rachel stood, her rifle cradled comfortably in her arms. 4,000 meters in darkness with interference. It was a challenge that would push her skills to their limit. But she had trained for exactly this kind of shooting. Long range. Difficult conditions. Targets that did not cooperate by standing still. She met Krell's eyes and nodded once. I'll need to confirm my zero and gather atmospheric data for the new range. You have 1 hour, Krell repeated. Use it wisely. As the cadets dispersed to prepare for the advanced course, Vexenar moved close to Tyler. This is absurd, he muttered. She cannot possibly succeed at 4,000 meters without computer assistance. The instructor is setting her up for public failure. But Tyler was still watching Rachel as she settled back into position, making minute adjustments to her scope. Perhaps, Tyler said quietly. Or perhaps we are about to learn something our computers cannot teach us. The range lights began to dim, simulating nightfall. Rachel checked her data book, reviewing her rifle's performance at extended ranges. She had shot 4,000 meters before back on Earth, in mountains where the air was thin and the wind was unpredictable. She knew what the rifle could do. Now she would prove what she could do. The challenge had been issued. And Rachel Hayes had never walked away from a challenge in her life. The range lights had dimmed to near darkness, simulating the conditions of a moonless night on a hostile world. Rachel Hayes lay in the prone position, her eye pressed against the scope of her rifle. At 4,000 meters, the targets were barely visible even with magnification. They moved in erratic patterns, appearing and disappearing behind cover. Thermal decoys glowed with false heat signatures. Holographic interference created phantom images that shifted and danced in the distance. Around her, the other cadets activated their enhanced vision systems. Night vision overlays painted their displays in shades of green and silver. Thermal imaging cut through darkness to reveal heat sources. Targeting computers worked overtime, trying to distinguish real targets from decoys, calculating lead angles for moving contacts, compensating for the extreme range. Rachel used none of these things. She had only starlight filtering through the chamber's observation ports and the limited ambient light that her scope could gather. She watched, patient, letting her eyes adjust fully to the darkness. Humans were not apex predators by accident. Their eyes, designed for hunting across ancient savannas, could see remarkably well when given time to adapt. She pressed her cheek against the stock, finding that perfect spot where the rifle became an extension of her body. Her breathing slowed, deep and controlled. 4 seconds in, hold for 2 seconds out. The rhythm calmed her heart rate, steadied her hands, brought her into that focused state where the world narrowed to just her, the rifle, and the target. The first target appeared downrange. A thermal signature moving left to right across her field of view. Rachel tracked it through her scope, watching the pattern of movement. Not random. The target paused every 7 seconds, a brief hesitation before continuing. She counted the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pause. Move. Pause. Move. Her hand reached up to the scope's elevation turret. She made an adjustment, a tiny click that represented a fraction of a degree. 4,000 meters meant she needed to compensate for significant bullet drop. The projectile would arc through the air like a thrown stone, rising above the line of sight before falling to meet the target. She calculated in her head, remembering the ballistic table she had memorized, adjusting for the station's artificial gravity that was slightly less than Earth standard. Wind was the harder problem. At this range, wind could push a bullet meters off course. She could not feel air movement in the climate-controlled chamber, but she could see its effects. A piece of debris floating near the target area drifted slowly from right to left. She watched it, estimated the speed, made another scope adjustment for windage. Vexenar's plasma rifle hummed at the next firing position. His targeting computer had locked onto something, tracking with electronic precision. He fired. The plasma bolt streaked downrange, glowing blue-white in the darkness. It struck a thermal decoy which exploded in a shower of sparks. His computer chirped a warning. False target. Recalculating. Rachel waited. The target paused in its movement pattern. 7 seconds. She had 7 seconds before it moved again. Her finger found the trigger, took up the slack. She exhaled halfway and held it, feeling the pause between heartbeats. The rifle cracked, the muzzle flashed brief and bright in the darkness. 4,000 meters away, 4 seconds later, the target registered a hit. Center mass. Clean kill. The range computer announced the score. Perfect. First round. Tyler Knox's quantum predictor was struggling. The holographic interference created multiple possible target locations, each with a different probability rating. His computer showed him 5 potential aim points, each with percentages attached. 63% confidence. 41% confidence. 28% confidence. He chose the highest probability and fired. His round impacted empty air where a holographic projection had been. Rachel worked her rifle's bolt, the empty casing ejecting into the darkness. She chambered another round and found her next target. This one moved faster, zigzagging unpredictably. She watched for 30 seconds, studying the pattern. There was always a pattern, even in chaos. Living things moved with rhythm, with purpose. Machines tried to randomize, but true randomness was harder than it looked. She saw it. Every third direction changed, the target hesitated for a fraction of a second. A timing glitch in whatever program controlled its movement. She waited for the pattern to repeat, confirmed her observation, then made her calculations. Lead the target, account for its speed, time the shot for that brief hesitation. Her second shot broke clean. Another hit. Another perfect score. Instructor Krell had moved from the control station. He walked slowly along the firing line, observing each cadet's technique. He watched Vexenair fight with his targeting computer, cycling through sensor modes trying to find one that could cut through the interference. He saw Tyler's frustration as his quantum predictor offered increasingly uncertain probability calculations. He observed a Nexhari cadet simply firing repeatedly at anything that might be a target, hoping volume of fire would eventually connect. Then Krell stopped behind Rachel's position. He stood there in silence, watching her breathing pattern so controlled it seemed almost meditative. Watching the way she pressed against the rifle, perfectly still, no tension in her muscles. Watching her eyes, focused through the scope with absolute concentration. Watching her trigger finger, moving with such smoothness that the rifle's discharge seemed to surprise even her. Rachel fired her third shot. Fourth shot. Fifth shot. Each one placed with the same careful precision, each one finding targets that the advanced AI systems around her could not reliably identify. She made adjustments between shots, tiny movements of the scope's turrets that seemed random but were based on observations invisible to the watching cadets. A shift in how the mirage bent through her scope told her wind had changed direction. The way a target's movement slowed told her it was farther away than the previous one. The pattern of shadows told her which thermal signatures were real and which were decoys designed to waste ammunition. Krell knelt beside her position, his scaled face close enough that she could hear his breathing. He did not speak to her, did not interrupt her concentration. Instead, he gestured to the other cadets, motioning them to observe. Vexenair approached reluctantly, his plasma rifle silent after exhausting its energy cell on phantom targets. Tyler came next, his environmental suit hissing softly. Others gathered, forming a semicircle behind Rachel's position. Watch, Krell said quietly. Watch her breathing. Consistent. Controlled. 4 seconds in, hold, 4 seconds out. This is not natural breathing. This is trained discipline. Rachel fired again. The rifle's crack echoed in the darkness. Downrange, another target registered a hit. Watch her position, Krell continued. The rifle does not move. Her body does not shift. She has become a stable platform. The weapon is merely an extension of her will. He pointed to Rachel's trigger hand. See how her finger moves? Straight back. No jerking. No anticipation. She does not know when the rifle will fire. She increases pressure until it happens. This prevents her from flinching, from pulling the shot off target. Rachel's hand moved to her scope, making another minute adjustment. A quarter turn of the elevation turret. The movement was confident, certain. She is reading conditions we cannot see, Krell said. She has no computer telling her wind speed, no sensor measuring air density. She observes, she calculates, she adjusts. This is not luck. This is skill developed over thousands of hours of practice. Vexenair's mandibles clicked in disbelief. But Instructor, without technology, how can she possibly? That is a sniper's build, Krell interrupted, his voice carrying a tone of respect that the cadets had rarely heard from the stern Instructor. Ancient human practice. Older than spaceflight. Older than most of your civilizations. Humans developed this skill when they were still bound to one planet, hunting across distances that meant the difference between eating and starving. He stood, his eyes sweeping across the assembled cadets. Your computers make you fast. Your targeting systems make you efficient. But they also make you dependent. When technology fails, when sensors are jammed, when AI cannot function, you become helpless. But a true sniper does not rely on technology to make the shot. They become the weapon system itself. Eyes, brain, hands, rifle. All parts of one unified tool. Rachel fired her 8th shot. She had not missed once. Corporal Hayes is demonstrating something you must understand, Krell said. Technology enhances capability, yes. But it cannot replace fundamental skill. It cannot replace patience. It cannot replace the human element of adaptability and instinct and will. Tyler's translator emitted a thoughtful tone. You are saying that primitive methods have value even in an advanced technological age? I am saying that methods are not primitive simply because they are old, Krell replied. I am saying that there is wisdom in practices that have survived for centuries. I am saying that perhaps we have become so dependent on our machines that we have forgotten how to function without them. Rachel completed her engagement sequence. 10 shots fired at targets beyond 4,000 meters, in darkness, through interference that defeated sophisticated computer systems. 10 perfect hits. She safed her rifle and sat up from her firing position, her movements calm and controlled. The other cadets stared at her with expressions ranging from disbelief to newfound respect. Vexenaar's earlier mockery had vanished, replaced by something that looked almost like awe. Tyler was already accessing his data pad, no doubt preparing questions about human sniper training methods. Krell nodded once to Rachel, acknowledgement from a master to someone who had proven their skill. Tomorrow we conduct field simulation, he announced. Real-world scenarios. We will see if this performance translates to tactical application. Rachel began cleaning her rifle, running a patch through the barrel. She had proven her point. But she also knew that Krell was right to push further. Shooting at a range was one thing. Combat was another entirely. The briefing room was silent as Instructor Krell activated the holographic display. The image that materialized showed a rugged landscape of broken buildings and rocky terrain. Urban warfare environment. Multiple sight lines. Concealed positions. The perfect hunting ground for snipers and the perfect killing ground for those who did not understand the nature of patient warfare. This is a recreation of the Battle of Kellhorn Ridge, Krell said, his scaled finger pointing to key features in the terrain. 4 years ago, coalition forces attempted to retake this position from separatist fighters. We sent in our finest sharpshooters, equipped with the most advanced technology available. Targeting AI. Predictive algorithms. Auto-tracking systems. Everything you cadets rely upon. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. We lost 60% of them in the first hour. The enemy employed counter-sniping AI with quantum prediction capabilities. Every time one of our shooters activated their targeting systems, every time their computers pinged the environment, every time they used enhanced sensors, the enemy AI detected the electronic signature and calculated their position. Vexenaar shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Tyler's environmental suit hissed with what might have been nervousness. The other cadets exchanged glances, their earlier confidence shaken by the thought of facing an enemy that could turn their own technology against them. Your objective is simple, Krell continued. Identify and eliminate all hostile snipers while avoiding detection. The enemy AI has been programmed to replicate the capabilities of the Kellhorn Ridge defense system. We'll hunt you. We'll find you. And if you rely on your technology, it will kill you. The holographic display shifted, showing casualty reports from the actual battle. Name after name of skilled shooters who had died because their advanced equipment had become a liability rather than an asset. Instructor, a next-Harry cadet's translator buzzed. If technology is a disadvantage in this scenario, how are we expected to succeed where trained soldiers failed? Krell's expression might have been a smile, though on a Veshan face it was hard to tell. That is what we are here to discover. You may use any equipment you choose. But remember, every electronic system you activate may be the signal that reveals your position. He looked directly at Rachel. Corporal Hayes, you will operate independently. The rest of you will work as a coordinated team. You have 10 minutes to prepare. The simulation begins when you enter the environment. Rachel stood and left the briefing room without a word. She had everything she needed already. Her rifle, her ammunition, her eyes and her mind. She required no additional preparation. The other cadets rushed to their equipment lockers, debating strategies, configuring their weapon systems for minimal electronic signature. Vexenaire argued for using passive sensors only. Tyler suggested rotating active scanning to avoid pattern detection. They were thinking tactically, trying to find ways to maintain their technological advantage while minimizing risk. Rachel entered the simulation chamber and immediately dropped low. The environment materialized around her, holographic projectors creating a startlingly realistic recreation of Kellhorn Ridge. Broken walls, collapsed buildings, rocky outcroppings, dozens of positions where a sniper could hide, and dozens more where an enemy might be waiting. She moved slowly, staying in shadows, using rubble for cover. Her rifle remained slung across her back. No reason to present a weapon profile until she had something to shoot at. She wore no active camouflage field. No electronic countermeasures. No sensor dampeners. Just standard combat clothing in colors that blended with the gray and brown terrain. The other cadets entered the simulation area in a loose formation. Rachel heard them before she saw them, the soft electronic whine of their equipment powering up. Vexenaire's plasma rifle hummed. Tyler's Gauss accelerator cycled through startup diagnostics. Their targeting computers began passive environmental scans, gathering data about the terrain. The first cadet died within 3 minutes. A next Harry shooter had activated enhanced thermal vision to scan a building interior. The emission was brief, barely a second of active sensor use. But it was enough. Somewhere in the simulation the enemy AI registered the electronic signature, calculated the source point and fired. The holographic simulation painted the cadet's suit with a red marker indicating lethal hit. Eliminated. Spread out. Vexenaire hissed into the team communication channel. Minimize electronic emissions. Passive sensors only. Rachel heard the transmission on her own receiver but did not respond. She had switched her comm unit to receive-only mode. No transmissions meant no signal for the AI to detect. She was alone in this, relying on her own skills rather than coordination with others. She observed the terrain carefully, looking for positions that offered good fields of fire. A sniper needed 3 things: visibility of the target area, protection from enemy observation, and a route of escape. She identified several such positions in the simulated landscape and began mentally cataloging them. Those were where the enemy would be. Another cadet fell. This one had been moving between cover when his quantum predictor had performed an automatic range-finding pulse. The pulse was designed to be stealthy, a brief laser measurement invisible to human eyes. But the enemy AI was not human. It detected the pulse, back-calculated the origin, and eliminated the threat. 2 dead in 5 minutes. Rachel moved to a collapsed building and settled into a position behind a broken wall. From here she could see 3 likely sniper hides. She watched them patiently, not through her rifle scope yet, just with her naked eyes. Watching for movement. For the glint of a lens. For anything that seemed out of place in the rubble. Vexenaire's team was in trouble. They were grouped too closely, trying to provide mutual support. But in a counter-sniper environment, clustering was death. The enemy AI did not need to find all of them individually. It just needed to find one and the others would be close by. 3 more cadets dropped in rapid succession. The enemy AI had detected something, Rachel could not tell what, and had calculated positions for multiple targets. The simulation filled with the sounds of simulated weapons fire, and 3 more cadets were marked as casualties. Fall back. Vexenaire transmitted. We cannot advance against this system. But falling back meant moving. And movement created patterns. The AI was learning their behavior, predicting their actions. Rachel saw it happening. The cadets were reacting with fear, making decisions based on survival instinct rather than tactical thinking. Fear made them predictable. Predictability made them dead. She remained still, barely breathing, watching. Her eyes swept across the terrain in a patient search pattern. Left to right, near to far, methodical, unhurried. This was the patience that Krell had spoken about. This was the skill that no computer could replicate. There. A shadow that did not quite match the angle of simulated sunlight. 4th floor of a half-collapsed tower, 60 degrees to her left. She watched that shadow for 2 full minutes. Most people could not remain perfectly still for that long. Eventually there was movement. Minute. Almost imperceptible. But movement nonetheless. Rachel brought her rifle up slowly, avoiding any sudden motion that might be detected by the AI's pattern recognition. She settled into her shooting position, stock against shoulder, eye to scope. The shadow resolved into a shape. The barrel of the enemy AI's weapon system, a holographic recreation of the actual defense systems from Kellhorn Ridge. She calculated range. 800 meters. Slight upward angle. Wind in the simulation was calm. No adjustment needed for drift. She controlled her breathing, found the pause between heartbeats, and pressed the trigger straight back. The rifle cracked. The AI sniper position exploded in simulated destruction. Eliminated. For 10 seconds nothing happened. Then Rachel heard Vexenaar's shocked voice on the comm channel. Someone just killed an enemy position. Who fired? Identify yourself. Rachel did not respond. She was already moving, relocating to a new position before the enemy AI could analyze the sound of her shot and calculate her location. She moved low and slow, using terrain to mask her movement, never presenting a silhouette against the skyline. The remaining cadets were down to 5 survivors out of 15. They had pinned themselves in a defensive position, afraid to move, afraid to use their equipment. Fear had paralyzed them. Meanwhile, Rachel methodically hunted. She found the second enemy position by elimination. If she were the AI, where would she place her units for maximum coverage? She thought like the enemy, anticipated the logic of placement. Northeast corner, elevated position, overlapping fields of fire with the tower she had already eliminated. She moved to a position where she could observe that area. 30 minutes of patient observation rewarded her with target confirmation. A brief reflection off the enemy's optics. She ranged the shot at 1200 meters. Wind had picked up in the simulation, left to right at approximately 10 kilometers per hour. She adjusted her scope and fired. 2 enemy positions eliminated. Instructor Krell watched from the observation room. Commander Yalaris stood beside him, the next Harry officer's energy form pulsing with interest. The human uses no technology, Yalaris observed. Yet she succeeds where our AI-assisted shooters fail. Explain this paradox. Krell's eyes never left the display showing Rachel's slow, methodical movement through the terrain. It is not a paradox, Commander. It is a lesson we should have learned at Kellhorn Ridge. The AI hunts electronic signatures. The human creates none. The AI predicts behavior based on tactical doctrine. The human moves with patient unpredictability. The AI calculates probabilities. The human operates on instinct and experience. So you are suggesting we abandon our technological advantages? I am suggesting we remember that technology is a tool, not a replacement for skill. Corporal Hayes is demonstrating what happens when fundamental capability is not dependent on systems that can fail or be countered. On the display, Rachel eliminated her third target. Then her fourth. She moved like a ghost through the simulation, invisible to systems designed to detect the very technology she refused to use. The other cadets remained pinned, too afraid to maneuver, slowly being eliminated by an enemy they could not find. Rachel found her fifth target and took the shot. The simulation registered all enemy positions destroyed. Threat eliminated. Mission complete. She had accomplished in 40 minutes what 15 cadets with advanced technology could not do. And she had done it without being detected even once. The simulation ended. The holographic environment dissolved. Rachel stood and slung her rifle, her expression calm. She had known she could do this. She had trained for exactly this scenario. Patient hunting. Invisible movement. Precise shooting. The fundamentals never changed. The observation room overlooking the simulation chamber had gone completely silent. Commander Yalaris stood at the central display, the next Harry officer's energy form pulsing with colors that Rachel's translation implant would have read as confusion and fascination. Around the room, instructors and senior officers watched the replay of what had just happened, trying to understand how one cadet with archaic equipment had accomplished what an entire team with advanced technology could not. Krell stood with his arms crossed, his scaled face showing the closest thing to satisfaction that a Veshan could express. He had suspected Rachel Hayes possessed true sniper capability. Now she had proven it beyond any doubt. Run the final sequence again, Commander Yalaris ordered. The holographic display rewound to show the last minutes of the simulation. Rachel had eliminated 4 of the 5 enemy AI positions through patient observation and precise shooting. The final AI, designated as the master system, had been positioned in what the simulation called an impossible location. A reinforced bunker with no direct line of sight from any viable shooting position. Thick armor plating. Sensor arrays that could detect any approach. This was the AI that had survived the longest at the actual Battle of Kellhorn Ridge, the system that had killed dozens of coalition sharpshooters before finally being destroyed by orbital bombardment. The display showed Rachel studying the terrain, lying motionless behind rubble for nearly 20 minutes. The other surviving cadets had given up, declaring the position impossible to engage. Vexenar had transmitted a request for the simulation to be called complete, arguing that the final target could not be eliminated with available resources. But Rachel had not given up. She had been thinking, calculating, observing. Not with computers or sensors, but with her eyes and her mind. The replay showed her movement to a new position, not closer to the enemy bunker but perpendicular to it. She had settled into a spot that seemed to have no tactical value whatsoever. Her rifle pointed at a section of broken concrete wall 70 meters away from the bunker entrance. "What is she doing?" a Talvari instructor had asked during the live observation. Krell had said nothing, watching intently. The replay showed Rachel making careful adjustments to her scope, precise calculations of angle and distance. Then she had fired. The round struck the concrete wall at a specific point, a reinforced section that acted like a ramp. The bullet ricocheted, its trajectory altered but not random. It had been calculated. Physics and geometry working together. The round deflected off the concrete, changed direction by exactly 43 degrees, and struck through the narrow sensor slit in the bunker's armor plating. Direct hit. Master AI eliminated. Simulation complete. The observation room had erupted in shocked exclamations. Tyler Knox had immediately begun running calculations on his data pad, trying to understand the mathematics involved. Vexenar had simply stared, his mandibles frozen in disbelief. Now, watching the replay for the third time, Commander Yalaris turned to Krell. "Explain how this is possible." A ricochet shot requires calculating the angle of deflection, the energy transfer upon impact, the altered trajectory. These are complex computations. Quantum processors struggle with the variables involved. Yet she accomplished this with no computer assistance. Krell gestured to the display. "You are asking the wrong question, Commander. You ask how her equipment performed these calculations. The equipment performed no calculations. The rifle is metal and glass. It has no intelligence. It cannot think or compute or predict." "Then how?" "The human did," Krell interrupted. "Corporal Hayes is the weapon system. The rifle is merely the delivery mechanism. She calculated the shot using training and experience that predates most galactic civilizations. Humans developed ricochet shooting techniques centuries ago. They practiced on ranges, learning how different materials affect bullet deflection. They studied geometry and physics not with computers but with trial and error and careful observation." Commander Yalaris pulsed with colors indicating skepticism. "You are suggesting that biological calculation exceeds quantum processing?" "I am suggesting that for certain applications, trained instinct and experience exceed algorithmic prediction," Krell replied. "A computer can calculate probable outcomes based on programmed physics models. But those models assume ideal conditions. They do not account for the microvariations in material composition, surface texture, environmental factors. A human with sufficient experience does not calculate these things consciously. They feel them. They know them. Pattern recognition developed over thousands of practice repetitions." Tyler Knox entered the observation room, his environmental suit hissing. "Instructor Krell, I have reviewed Corporal Hayes' shot 17 times. I cannot replicate the calculation. My quantum predictor cannot provide a reliable solution. The variables are too complex, too dependent on unknowable factors." "Exactly," Krell said. "Which is why your technology failed where the human succeeded. You relied on your computer to tell you what was possible. When it said the shot was impossible, you believed it." Corporal Hayes did not ask a computer if the shot was possible. She observed, she calculated using skills developed through practice, and she executed. Commander Yalaris moved closer to the display, studying Rachel's final position. "This has significant tactical implications. If our soldiers are dependent on technology that can be countered or jammed, we are vulnerable. But if we can train personnel to operate effectively without technological support." "That is the lesson of this exercise," Krell confirmed. "Technology enhances capability, but it should not replace fundamental skill. Our forces have become so dependent on AI assistance, on targeting computers, on sensor systems, that they forget how to function when those systems fail." Down in the simulation chamber, Rachel had been joined by several cadets who wanted to understand what she had done. Vexenar approached hesitantly, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine curiosity. Corporal Hayes, Vexenar said, his translator making his voice sound almost humble. I must know. How did you calculate that final shot? What formula did you use? Rachel was field stripping her rifle, cleaning the barrel with methodical care. No formula, she said. I looked at the angle of the wall, remembered how concrete affects bullet deflection from previous experience. I estimated the ricochet angle based on the bullet's velocity and construction. Then I aimed where I thought the round would need to hit to deflect toward the bunker opening. But the precision required practice, Rachel interrupted. I have fired thousands of rounds on ricochet courses. You learn what works and what doesn't. You develop a feel for it. Tyler approached with his data pad extended. Corporal, would you be willing to teach us your methods? The fundamentals you use? I believe we have much to learn from human sniper techniques. Rachel looked up from her rifle. Around her stood a dozen cadets from various species, all wearing expressions of interest rather than mockery. The simple rifle that they had laughed at hours ago now represented something they wanted to understand. Manual wind reading is a good place to start, Rachel said. She stood and gestured for them to follow her to the observation windows overlooking the station's exterior. Space stretched beyond the transparent aluminum, stars scattered across the darkness. You can't feel wind in space, a cadet objected. No, Rachel agreed. But you can see its effects. Look at that debris field drifting past the station. See how it moves? That's caused by the station's atmospheric venting, by gravitational influences from nearby celestial bodies, by solar wind. If you were trying to shoot across that space, you'd need to account for those forces acting on your projectile. She pointed to different sections of the debris field. See how those pieces tumble? That tells you about rotational forces. See how they drift in a specific direction. That tells you about prevailing influences. Your computer can measure these things with sensors, yes. But what happens when your sensors are damaged? What happens when you need to make a shot and your computer is offline? Tyler was recording everything on his data pad. Other cadets leaned closer, studying the debris field with new attention. The key is observation, Rachel continued. Your eyes can tell you almost everything you need to know if you train them properly. Wind speed, direction, temperature gradients, air density variations. All of these things have visible effects if you know what to look for. Vexenar clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. This requires time, patience, qualities that technology allows us to bypass. Technology lets you work faster, Rachel corrected. But faster isn't always better. A patient shot placed correctly is worth more than 10 fast shots that miss. She walked to an equipment locker and retrieved her data book, the notebook where she recorded her rifle's performance characteristics. This is old technology. Paper and ink. If my electronics fail, if my power systems die, I still have this information. I can still make corrections based on recorded data. She opened the book, showing pages filled with handwritten notes. Temperature versus velocity changes. Elevation adjustments for different ranges. Wind drift calculations for various speeds and angles. Hundreds of hours of collected data, all recorded manually. This is your database? Tyler asked, fascinated by the primitive storage method. This is experience made permanent, Rachel said. Every shot I have ever fired taught me something. I recorded what I learned so I could reference it later. Your computers store data too, but do you understand that data? Can you interpret it without the computer telling you what it means? She closed the book and looked at the assembled cadets. I'm not saying technology is bad. I'm saying you should not be helpless without it. Learn the fundamentals. Practice them until they become instinct. Then when you add technology on top of that foundation, you become truly capable. Instructor Krell entered the chamber, Commander Yalaris accompanying him. Corporal Hayes, the commander wishes to speak with you. Rachel stood at attention. Commander Yalaris' energy form pulsed with colors that her implant translated as respect and interest. Corporal, your performance today has been exceptional, Yalaris said. I am authorizing the creation of a new training program. You will work with Instructor Krell to develop a curriculum teaching coalition forces the fundamentals of marksmanship without technological assistance. Basic skills that will make them effective even when their advanced systems fail. Understood, Commander. Additionally, I am recommending you for immediate advancement to instructor status. Your knowledge is too valuable to waste on standard cadet training. Rachel nodded once, accepting the recognition without pride or false modesty. She had simply done what she had been trained to do. Vexenar approached again. Corporal Hayes, I owe you an apology. I mocked your equipment without understanding the skill behind it. I called your methods primitive when I should have called them foundational. Apology accepted, Rachel said. And for what it's worth, your plasma rifle is impressive. With proper fundamental skills, you would be even more effective with it. Tyler's translator emitted a pleased tone. When do we begin training, Instructor Hayes? Rachel picked up her rifle, the simple metal and glass weapon that had proven its worth. Now, we start with breathing control. Everything else builds from there. She walked toward the range, followed by a group of cadets eager to learn what computers could not teach them. The rifle that had been laughed at now represented wisdom. The primitive methods now represented foundation. And the human who relied on skill rather than technology now represented something the entire coalition needed to understand. Fundamentals mattered. Technology failed. But a well-trained shooter with a reliable rifle would always find a way to make the shot.